At the new Lloydminster Nissan, we're proud to offer the guaranteed lowest rates on used vehicles and the best selection we've ever had. Stop in today and you'll find clear pricing on all of our pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. And right now, you'll save 10% on our service department. That's 10% on parts and labor on all makes and models. Call the new Lloydminster Nissan at 780-875-3335 to make your appointment today. At the new Lloydminster Nissan, we won't sell you a car, we'll help you buy one.
Local people. Local news and events. Local sports. Local matters. For all things Lloydminster area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
We want to welcome you inside the new Lloydminster Nissan. We have the guaranteed lowest rates and the best selection of pre-owned vehicles that we've ever had, all clearly marked. And right now in our service department, you get 10% off, and that includes parts and labor. And our service department is now open on Saturdays from 9 to 1 for tire rotations and oil changes. The Mayor of Lloydminster, Mr. Gerald Aalbers, is our guest today. Welcome, Gerald. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Kurt.
Superior Water specializes in nothing but water, and with over 22 years in the business, they're proud and confident that their water and their service is superior. For iron filters, water softeners, reverse osmosis distillers, chlorine removal, and H2S odor removal, give Superior Water a call, 780-875-6636, or stop and see them at their 57th Avenue location. They're right beside Sheepskin Loft. And stay hydrated with pure, clean water. I drink Superior Water because I like the taste, and after all, it is superior water. Well, it's National Nurses Week, and you're invited at any time to nominate a nurse for Cupcakes for Caregivers. But of course, especially during Nurses Week, we're proud to work with Sobeys Lloydminster and the Lloydminster District United Way to present Cupcakes for Caregivers. It's a way to say thank you for all that caregivers do for us in the community. And not just nurses, but everyone who goes out of their way and that extra mile to take care of others. You can nominate a caregiver today by sending an email to livewithkurtprice@gmail.com. We'll be heading out today, we're heading out this afternoon, and we'll deliver some cupcakes for caregivers again today. But keep those nominations coming in. Lloydminster Minor football registration remains open, and Dallin Falls-Shear is the LMFA president. He told us that they will continue to take registrations for spring and the fall, with this season taking a break over the summer, but they have started right now.
Right now, it's the same fee regardless if you do just the fall or if you do both. It's going to be the same price, so we encourage kids to get out and start learning some fundamentals and everything else that we have going this spring.
The Lloydminster Exhibition's Chase the Ace has returned and is already close to $30,000. Tomorrow night's draw will go at 7:30 as per usual. Tickets, once again, just $10 each. 3 for $25, 8 for $50, or 20 for $100. You can go to lloydx.com and purchase with your credit card, or you can find details on how to set up an e-transfer. You can also purchase tickets in person at the LloydX main office, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. If you drive by the LloydX, you'll see that they're renovating the outside of what used to be the old Stockade Convention Center.
WLS Convention Center now.
With dollars that were raised through
Absolutely.
the Chase the Ace.
Thank you, everybody that's supported the X with Chase the Ace. The money they've been able to raise through that program has been able to put into capital, something that's a challenge for everybody. And I can talk about that all day long from the state's perspective, but the Lloyd X being a nonprofit, capital dollars are hard to come by. And the Chase the Ace programs help provide that. And I really want to say thank you to the community and the greater community, everybody that bought tickets. We know we've had people from across Saskatchewan, Alberta buying tickets, so thank you.
Tractors and Pie is coming to Weaver Heritage Park on May 24th. This is your chance to enjoy some pie for just $5 or pie and ice cream for $7.50. And Dick Airy also told us that you can educate yourself at Weaver Heritage Park, or they can help educate you all about the large part of that Heritage Weaver Park, which is their antique tractors.
You know, and that's what we really need, because a lot of people walk away from Heritage Park not really understanding why we do that and what we really have there. Like, we have some tractors that are well over 100 years old and they still run. Okay, I don't know whether you'd want to farm with them or not, but they still run.
Well, that sounds exactly like a Lloydminster thing, doesn't it?
Well, it
Tractors
does. You
and
know,
pie.
tractors and pie and ice cream even go together better than that. And, you know, from that perspective, if you're going to learn something, nobody better to teach you than Dick Airy. He taught a lot of folks machining, some more than others, I understand, talking to some city staff that were students of Dick's, but we'll leave it at that.
I want to say congratulations to Matt and Twyla Thompson as the winners of our second Feed the Farmer lunch this year. We'll be heading out on Thursday to deliver a delicious roast beef meal. And unfortunately, Twyla is not going to be there. But at the same time, she won't have to worry about Matt, that's for sure. We'll take care of Matt and the crew. You can nominate a farmer in our Feed the Farmer contest by visiting any of our sponsor Facebook pages, including Live with Kurt Price, and enter a farmer to win a delicious roast beef meal delivered right to them. You'll also be entering them to win one of two $500 Diamond 7 Meats gift cards, plus winners will also be entered to win 160 acres of aerial spray from Bradley Air. So thank you to all our incredible sponsors: Diamond 7 Meats, Sobeys Lloydminster, Horizon Ag and Turf, Richardson Pioneer, BASF, the Tent Guys, and Bradley Air. They're committed, certified, reliable, and they will help you get your life back. BioClean Disaster Services just celebrated 10 years. And when I talked to Jody, he said, well, we're 10 years at this location. We've been in Lloydminster longer than 10 years, but we've been at this location for 10 years. That's over 10 years of helping people get their lives back, taking care of their property and their belongings, but more than anything, taking care of them and their families. 1-833-246-8326. And if you should have a disaster, that's what they will do. They'll take care of you and your family. Lloydminster's largest restoration company, also Lloydminster's local restoration company. BioClean Disaster Services, 1-833-246-8326. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got Mayor Gerald Aalbers here, and we're going to ask the big question. Everybody's been talking about it. Costco. We'll start with that when we come back.
At CK McKean Roofing, they understand what it took to put that roof over your head for your family. With over 20 years of experience under their belt, they strive to show you that with their workmanship and their integrity. Not all roofing companies are created equal, and that's why CK McKean Roofing encourages you to focus on your most important investments, your home and your family. CK McKean Roofing. Roofers do it on top.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back. You help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
Spend less time chasing wind speeds and more time doing what matters. Bradley Airspray takes care of your mid-season applications with speed, precision, and zero crop damage. That's no ruts, no delays, just fast, effective coverage that protects your yield and preserves your time. Plan to attend their grand opening on June 18th at the Lloydminster Airport, where you could win 160 acres of spraying. Call or text 780-205-7767. That's 780-205-PROP. Bradley Airspray, because your time is worth more.
Is that like Dusty the Crop Hopper? Or,
pretty close to
it. Pretty
yeah.
close, you know. I want to see Garth George with his Dusty outfit. I wonder if I saw a yellow plane, but I don't know if he's going to get an orange and white one or not.
I think it's yellow. Yeah,
I think it's, well, we'll stay tuned. He's got a couple hiding. Ones. Yeah, he might. A couple yellow fellas.
We're going to be there June 18th. It's a good thing for the airport.
It's absolutely a great thing. It's a great thing for the area. And, you know, from having worked in that industry way back when I used to supply aerial applicators, certainly, you know, they do make it work where they can, but if they can land on a hard runway, it's much easier on the airplane and you know, efficient, safe, and effective. It's that simple.
So our guest is Mayor Gerald Aalbers. It's great to have some time with him. And as I said, we'll start with the major question that's got everybody talking, everybody sitting around having coffee. It's on Facebook and chat groups and everything like that. Is Costco coming? Can we officially say Costco will be in Lloydminster?
Well, I can't tell you that Costco's coming for sure because I don't know for sure. I do know that Musgraves Developments have proceeded with a commercial development in that southwest corner of the city. We've seen dirt moving, we've seen water and sewer pipes and things like that. We understand there will be some businesses that will be taking up that area, but I don't have an announcement for you today, Kurt, if that's what you're looking for. And you know, people have asked, that's the number one question I get asked when I'm out in the public, you know, is Costco coming? I says, if I had an answer, I'd give it to you, but I don't have an answer.
So they haven't signed anything to say?
I don't know. That would be between Musgraves Developments and any potential business that's going out that way, if that's what they're looking at doing or who they've attracted. Certainly they are going to have anchor tenants, as most people do in the development business, I would suspect, as well as other folks that are saying, oh, yeah, I'd be interested in going out there. So that's one of the pieces, and we only know as it unfolds through the city after a building permit is requested and issued. Then that's when it might show up on my desk through that way, but that's handled through the planning and development team at the city. So that's that arm's length where it's not directed by city council or directly out of the city hall. It's a process, and it doesn't happen if it was, you know, no different than when new Lloydminster Nissan built this building. People kind of wondered what was coming. They applied for a development permit, building permit, and all the processes that go through it. So
I wish we had the kind of traffic that Costco gets, but wouldn't the city have to know, Gerald? Like, wouldn't somebody have to tell you guys, hey, this is going to be a very busy, it's not just going to be, you know, a Western wear store or something like that. It's going to be a huge shop,
potentially shopping center.
Tires, there's probably a gas bar. Wouldn't you have to at some point know so that you could prepare infrastructure around that?
Ideally, we always like to do that, but there's the cost to do that, and which infrastructure. It's currently served by roads, and it's going to be served by that area of Musgraves because they're the developer putting in the water and sewer and things like that. You know, I look outside this window and we have Highway 17, and anybody that travels that road in the morning, lunchtime, and evening has a few choice words, I know, when they're backed up with traffic because it's single lane. And that is a challenge, is keeping up with or being ahead of development. If we had the area structure plan for the other side of 75th and we knew there was going to be potentially commercial there and residential development and people were standing there saying, we're ready, let's do it, we'd have those off-site levies to improve the roads. But that's the challenge that comes with it, is sometimes in a perfect world, it doesn't happen that way. And, you know, infill is always nice from that perspective. That's why people choose to go downtown, because the roads are finished. You know, not all the streets are perfect, but from that perspective, when you move to the outskirts, the edges, the outside of the city, that's the challenge, to put in what we call urban road versus what we currently have rural road. Shoulders and a ditch versus having that proper drainage in place. And people say, well, it's no big deal, just lay down some asphalt. But again, as I've often said, we don't lay new asphalt until we do the groundwork. And that's what they call the unsexy stuff: water, sewer, and stormwater. Yet the most expensive. Laying the asphalt's actually quite cheap in comparison to digging up the earth and putting in that piping that has to be there, because once you put in curb and gutter, it's got to go somewhere, and that's the stormwater drain and things like that. So that's where the expense comes from. And until, you know, we know what's there, then we plan for the future accordingly.
Is the road going to go right through? Do you know?
From the
I guess it would be, is it 72nd?
No, so you're going to have 75th is there, north-south. I believe the development is looking at connecting across to like the roads that are from 59th coming into that area at College Park. There would be some sort of connection through there for people, because that's, we try and finish the roads through, even though that didn't happen at Holy Rosary, right? A little detour.
Right. When would you expect you will know? Like, when would you have to know? Like,
well, we know that road's been picking up. The activity just generally in that area continues to pick up. It's seeing big trucks around there. So there's going to be some road work done this year. Some turning lanes with the development going in. Lights work done on 12th and 75th. So the city is trying to be proactive as best as we can based on the information we have to ensure that it's orderly. It's never perfect. Even like I say, I look outside here and all the businesses from the south end of Lloyd would love to see, I'm sure, 4-lane turning lanes and drainage, but those are the dollars that, you look back and go, what decisions we make today will have huge impacts. I'm sure former councils would doing the same thing. Where do you spend the dollars and when do you spend them? And that's always a challenge.
how much would you like to be able to say Costco's coming? What would that do for our confidence in our economy in the city of Lloyd?
I think it'll have a huge impact if and when. That's the piece. That's the kind of economic development news that a lot of communities would love to hear. I can tell you Fort McMurray would love to announce that, but I just don't think, because it's a captured audience, their market, there's no growth in market. Our growth has been demonstrated. We did an economic study a couple of years ago and shows that we have an trading area of 215,000 people. So I think that's fairly attractive. We punch our weight way above others for the dollars per square foot of business that businesses are able to bring in. So we are a regional center. We often talk about Grand Prairie. Anybody that's been in that northwest knows that Grand Prairie is a regional center. Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, even Red Deer between Calgary and Edmonton. But if you look at it, who's strategically located between Saskatoon and Edmonton? Lloydminster. We know we have the number of gas stations, a number of restaurants. 94 was my last count of places to eat in this city. From that perspective, people do stop here. We get a lot of traffic out in northwest Saskatchewan, and people have been asking me for some time. This isn't the last 8 years, certainly the last couple of years, with former reporter at the Source reporting story after story on this. It's drawn some attention, but again, from a business perspective, businesses tend to hold their cards fairly close to their chest, depending on the business. And like I say, there's a few businesses I suspect that are working with Musgrave Developments and plan on making some announcements as things go forward. But how far ahead do you get from that perspective? Because as we saw, there's dirt moving, water and sewer going in the ground. There's still a fair amount of work to be done. The asphalt's got to be laid to get you streets, street lighting. The utilities need to go in, gas and electricity. So there's a fair amount of work to be done there yet in sight.
Would you know if there's a list of businesses that are looking at Lloydminster and saying, hey, if Costco comes there, we want to be around that Costco, we want to be in the city, we want to make sure, hey, it's going to change things?
So the city and the team at the Economic Development team have been attending what's called the International Convention of Shopping Centers Conference in Whistler, BC in January for the last couple of years. And we have had business meetings with numerous businesses and major corporations that continuously look at Lloydminster from that perspective. Some of them are already operators in the community and maybe looking at a second location or additional locations. And that's, we're on the map for a number of reasons. First of all, the Cenovus Energy Hub has got a lot of people interested from that perspective. To see that kind of development with the potential to be multi-use from that perspective. Trust me, people have asked us there as well, is Costco coming and go? You'd have to ask Costco and ask the developer, because it's not in our direct control and we're not involved at that table.
You mentioned the Cenovus Energy Hub. I'll be, I think, a little polite by saying the city's been raked over the coals a couple of times about the cost of the Cenovus Energy Hub. I see you're agreeing with me that they have been raked up a little bit. The newest one is that you're borrowing an extra $7 million. And then there was a story in the paper about this is going to cost us. I know. I'm going to be honest. I was a little confused on the wording.
Okay.
But so it's going to cost us an extra $70 million at 2.4 a year, borrowing for 30 years. I believe was what it said.
What it said. Okay.
And that would. So I was looking at that and going, okay, that makes it sound like. You put the two together and people look at it and go, $7 million. Are we going to pay $70 million back for borrowing? That's the way it came across.
So let's unpack this just a little bit, if we
Okay.
can, Kurt, from the beginning. So when, it's challenging because this project has been in the making for a number of years. We've had some different numbers. So when the budget, when council agreed from the perspective finally to give it the green light, it was a $93 million project. That included water, sewer, gas, and electricity. We were just talking about a development, as well as the road infrastructure to support it, which some communities and some might have said, oh, that's out of the road budget. That's not part of the project. We felt it was important anything attached to that project be costed to that project. We also knew that we were applying for federal and provincial money from Saskatchewan, Canada for infrastructure to a maximum of $50 million project. So we were able to secure about 36 million, I think it's about 36 million, 2/3 of the project of the $50 million cost. The maximum the feds were willing to contribute to a project like this was was a maximum of 50 million. We were over that and we realized that. We also realized we'd have to borrow some money because that was where the first borrowing. We also had a plan and is still on plan, and we continue to have negotiations with the government of Alberta discussing the value of this economic development project in our city and the infrastructure costs that are associated, because it's a little different language as we've seen with what's happened in Edmonton and Calgary of the last budgets from that perspective. They haven't put money into Rogers Place or into the new arena, but they put infrastructure money in to support that development. And that's the position I'm taking with the government of Alberta. I've chatted with MLA Garth Rosewell, and we've been talking to the Premier and ministers over the summer about that. That's really what this becomes. Who else has partnered? Some people have partnered on the building. That's Saskatchewan, Canada, and the city is on the hook for that. What we're asking the government of Alberta to come forward. We had hoped, and the presentations had been made to several ministers and Treasury Board requesting that contribution in the last budget that came out in late February. It wasn't there. So one of the items that was originally discussed going back to when we borrowed the 30 million and laid out the whole project, it would potentially mean borrowing and fundraising and grants, and that's where we're still on track. Then let's go back from the 93 million. When the final number came in, it came in just over 101 million, so just over $7.5 million more money from that perspective, without tapping the city's reserves completely, because that's a question. If something was to happen to the West End Reservoir, as an example, and we had to replace that, it would be nice to have some reserves money and not have to go again borrow all the money, as we've tried to do that, and that's one of the challenges that we've experienced. So now we're at 101 million. The government of Alberta has not given us a commitment, and we may not get it. But trust me, I'm not giving up, and neither is council, neither is administration. But we also want people to understand, if we do not find those extra sources of revenue, we will have to borrow an additional $7 million on the 33 million. So it'll be up to $40 million on a project that's going to serve the next number of generations in our city. A lot of people stopped me and said, Mr. Mayor, we built the Service Sports Centre for cash. Why didn't we build this new facility for cash? I just want to take people back in a period of time. You look at the Service Sports Centre, great facility, used weekend after weekend after weekend. Well, during this week as well, we host 7,000 people when there's tournaments of hockey, volleyball, basketball. The facility is getting well used. But it was a different time. The costs, I believe it was about $28.5 million to build that building back when they did. It's way past 50 million, if not 75 million to replace, which is hard to believe, right? That's where we're at with the Cenovus Energy Hub. How can you spend that much money to build 2 rinks? And I follow, and talk to a lot of people from around the Saskatchewan, Alberta when it comes to recreation. And I had an individual tell me in Calgary they're replacing a rink similar to, I would compare it to the Archie. It just has a few seats in it, but it's 50 years old. They're replacing it with 2 rinks, basically equivalent to the Archie, for $80 million. And they're on a service lot. They're not bringing in water and sewer. They're not bringing in, they'll have some parking work to do after the building's tore down and the new arena is built. But it's just hard to imagine. But I remind people, I remember when my dad told me a story of buying a brand new pickup truck, standard F-150 in 1973 for cash for $3,500. Don't think you have a new vehicle on the lot that would come in for $10,000, let alone $20,000. So the costs of things have gone astronomical, have moved up dramatically, but a lot of things have changed. But the bottom line is the arena, we will continue to fundraise. We will continue to approach the government of Alberta and work with them as best we can, because we want to bring them as a partner, because 2/3 of the city pays taxes to the government of Alberta as personal income tax or business taxes. We also have people that are going to use the facility from around the city, both the county of Vermilion River and other places from Alberta as well as Saskatchewan. And this is the tough part. The government of Alberta, I've had numerous conversations from the Premier to the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Finance said, Mr. Mayor, I understand totally. Minister Horner has been very open and very candid. The pressures that he's been under to try and deliver health care, education with a booming population in Alberta, there's been challenges. And we're not the only communities that have recreation and cultural challenges that want to improve the quality of life for our residents, and looking to the government for support. So that's a long-winded answer to a fairly simple question. Now, how many dollars? I apologize, I don't have the exact layout, but the $7 million will not add $70 million total to the payment. But if I will try and get that information back to you so it's very clear what we're looking at. There are payments. We know what we have. The other piece I want to make sure people understand is we haven't borrowed the money. We actually have only borrowed to this point $10 million on that facility. So if somebody wants to walk in and write a check for $20 million and make a donation, the city accept that, and there'd be $20 less million we'd have to put down against the building. And I know that's extreme. I don't know if anybody would walk in with a $20 million check, but we haven't borrowed that money yet. But the process requires us to be open, transparent to people, saying this is what we are proposing to do if we have to do it. And it's no different than any other borrowing. We try not to borrow the full amount if the project comes in under budget, but if we don't do it at the front end, then you see what we have had to do now. We have to go back and do an amendment to the borrowing bylaw.
Will borrowing money push other projects back? I know people want a new pool, there's the museum, there's a whole lot of stuff. Was this completely, totally planned for the borrowing that would still be on track with, because I know they've started some preparations, they've started looking into a new pool, they started looking into some other things. Yep. Does it push everything back, Gerald?
No, it doesn't. That came to council, actually, to the GPC meeting yesterday, if anybody wants to see that, and it's online, the financials for the quarter. So, one of the things, and a question I wanted to ask, I didn't get a chance to ask yesterday of administration, was when did the city start borrowing? Because what the report we have shows the first borrowing that we're making payments on yet is 2015. And I know for a lot of things we paid cash for them in the past. Like I say, the Service Sports Center is an example. It was paid for when it was built. The council chose that, I understand, based on the history I've got from people. But in 2015, we had to borrow money to fix the outdoor pool. The council the day borrowed money for the outdoor pool, for the water and sewer. There was money borrowed against the new RCMP building, or the building that known as the RCMP building. There was money borrowed against the city shop or the city operations center from that perspective. And that's one of the things we discussed yesterday, is how important planning reserves are to ensure the long-term viability of the community, as well as who picks up the tab when things need to be done. Let's talk about the pool and the museum. Both items that are very important to our community. The pool is in great shape. It's just well used. Utilization is huge. And we could use more swimming times. I know the swim clubs would like to host more events. So there will be some planning being done in due time, because I think that likely is the next major facility. The museum, how do we, there's still some work to be done from that perspective. There's a $3 million landscaping bill on that property before I'd, as mayor, would want to invest any money in a structure to ensure that that land drains properly and that drainage problem is resolved that's been there forever, but was never addressed. And again, decisions were made, and it's like they say, water under the bridge is gone. Now we have to deal with what's there. So the borrowing ability, the city has the ability to borrow. Is that what taxpayers want? We want to make sure we understand that. Do they want to pay more taxes to put money in reserves for the next couple of years to build up reserves so we can add on or build a new pool? Because that's the challenge. Running two facilities such as pools would be the most expensive option we could look at from the research we've done. Adding on to the facility, but then we bring in a partner because we don't own the land adjacent to the pool. That belongs to Lakeland College and the government of Alberta. So there's always more dimensions than simply let's build the pool, put a shovel in the ground, we're going to start raising money from that perspective. And a lot of things play into that. We have a new federal government. What are they going to look at for infrastructure and how are they going to deem that? We've talked extensively with both provinces to the ministers about a tri-party agreement, just like we had with Saskatchewan, Alberta for the Cenovus Energy Hub, the wastewater treatment plant. We had all three governments involved in that one. Those are the kind of conversations going on at a provincial level with, as municipalities, with our provincial organizations, with the provincial governments, and that was the message that was conveyed to Ottawa. And now we have a new cabinet. I guess we'll find out in due time where Prime Minister Carney wants to take Canada from an infrastructure perspective, because I often share this with the ministers. You can continue to build new schools and hospitals in our communities, but if we can't get there with water, sewer, and roads, it's going to be, and if you followed the news, Camrose run into that problem with the developer, where the developer built a new school as planned, but never put the water and sewer in. And the city had met their commitment to their edge. The development was there and became a little bit of a challenge for both the community, the department, and the developer. And we want to ensure that we can look after that, and that's why we continue to invest in our infrastructure in our city.
Does the borrowing push the cost up? So are we looking at more because we have to borrow over that $101 million?
Well, so we're not borrowing 101 million. It'd be approximately 40 million.
But does it push the overall cost?
You've got the borrowing costs. So one of the other pieces about borrowing and why we've only borrowed 10 million is our team at the finance department has done a great job managing the cash flow at the city. No different than any other business that has obligations and individuals, right? You've got a paycheck, you've got bills to pay. How do you manage that? So our finance team's done an excellent job. So we're going to, to take the words out of our executive manager of financial services in that group, from that is that we will not borrow the money until we absolutely have to try and get the lowest interest rate as possible. And we've seen interest rates come down. They're sort of stable right now. Can they come down some more? We sure hope so. And if that's the case, it lowers our overall payments over 30 years. So, and this is where when I talk about that intergenerational, you're not, as a taxpayer today, you're not paying for it. The next group of taxpayers and the great taxpayers after that who'll be using that facility will be paying for it as well. And that's one of the challenges, just like a 30-year mortgage on a home.
So when we're talking about the loan, one of the comments that I see the most is, if you had to borrow the money, why did you have to build it now? And I know we visited this before, but there may be some people who are late to the party or haven't heard before. Why now?
Well, again, I'm going to go back for a little history. When the council of 2016 got elected, which was my first council as mayor, being elected, we knew we had the wastewater treatment plant. That was brought forward. Administration said, we've got a series of projects. What's the number one project? And we said, well, it looks like it's the wastewater treatment plant. It's the most critical. It had the most impact from not just our city, but on 150,000 plus people downstream in the North Saskatchewan River. So that's why we tackled it. Then as the next couple of years went on, there was discussion about issues at the Community Services Building, the old, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the school adjacent to the RCMP detachment. We had issues in the basement and or the crawl space and the building. It was only 43% rentable because of the wide hallways. It was a former school converted. And there was it needed some major capital dollars. And all of a sudden we said, is that important? And is there good value? And council administration felt it wasn't. That's why the building's no longer there. At the same time, we started conducting building inspections across the city. Formal inspections, structural engineers, looking at, let's make sure what will we have to address. And by that time, we know things were starting to pick up cost already. We got to the point, the Centennial Civic Center came back. The engineer at the time said you have 6 to 8 years structure of a facility. 2 years later, he came back with a revision. He looked at it again and said, you have 2 to 4 years. So as council today, we had a choice. Do we invest in, and I'm going to go south of $27 million is the number I had in my mind that when I read the synopsis of the report, to bring the Centennial Civic Center up to speed. And there's a long list of laundry items, including but the biggest one, and we've done everything possible to ensure the safety of people, is the artificial ice plant is in the building. There's actually ammonia in the building, and that was the building spec back in '67, but it isn't today. I can sure guarantee you that. So after the issues that happened, I believe it was Fernie, British Columbia, the city's team went in and did all the safety practices that we could, but it still doesn't move the ice plant out of the arena. And again, that would take major structural work to remove that plant from the arena, as well as other issues. And there's a plethora of items there. But at the same time, we said to the engineer, is it safe enough to use until we can find an alternate building? And yes, and again, without throwing back a lot of history, there was reports dating back to the late 90s saying maybe it was time to take a look at spending some serious capital on that, and the choice was made not to. And I wasn't sitting at that table, and none of the council of today or most of the administration were not sitting there. So I can't say why they justified not or what they were looking at, but faced with what we had, $27 million. So let's just talk about that. We wouldn't have got a government grant, so we'd have had to either go to reserves, and there'd have been some there, and borrow $17 to $20 million to update a 60-year-old building that might. And again, the trouble was he couldn't give us, the engineer wasn't prepared to say, well, if you do that, I can say it's good for 20 years, 10 years, 30 years. And knowing that, it would be like a farmer saying, well, do I plant a crop that I might be able to sell or not be able to sell? You won't have a farmer plant a crop he's not going to know that he can sell in the fall. That's kind of the logic I used and went, okay, from my perspective, I can support not putting $27 million into that building and look at something that we know is going to be built to the current specs. We had some young ladies raise $100,000, and they put a lot of energy into it to make an arena that meets the needs of today. We have people in our community with mobility challenges. We had a dad who was in a wheelchair trying to help his girls on a hockey team, and he couldn't be at the bench and open the gate because we had a facility that was 60 years old that didn't accommodate people with mobility challenges. And that's not the only reason, but that's just one of the many features that the new arena will have that we couldn't have updated the old arena to from that perspective. So there was a multitude of things. And again, there's still, I'm sure that there will be people after the new building's open that says, nope, should have kept the old building. And I go, it's always easy looking from the outside. And, I was chatting with some people earlier today and said, how do you deal with Facebook? I go, I don't, because I can't solve this argument. I appreciate this opportunity to share this information today, and any other time people want to stop and chat, I'll share as much information as I can with them from that perspective, because we have nothing to hide. There's no secret. I didn't get a trip from PCL to go to the Jamaica after this project is done. This project is what we believe the community needs today and into the future. And the Centennial Civic Center has so many great memories, but I think that we can all relate to wherever you grew up, the school you might have went to, the church you attended, the playground. We all have great memories, but and we'll try and capture as many of those, and that's what's being done. But sooner or later, when do you say enough? And I'll go back to the car analogy. I look outside in your lot, Kurt. You don't have many cars over 10 years old on your lot. Why? People have cars that are over 10 years old, but they spend an awful lot of money and they only drive them for a certain amount of the summer each and every year. We do have to sometimes keep up and be a little bit more modern than we are.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about a couple of things. We spent a lot of time on Costco and a lot of time on the new arena, but I still want to talk about healthcare. It's become a major. I don't know if you saw Paul Richer on our show, but Paul had some concerns about the Saskatchewan government doing their part, and also about what would happen to Lloydminster, and have you thought about it if Alberta did separate? If Alberta separated, what would happen to our city? We'd be on a border between two nations, or would we? So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break and we'll come right back with healthcare to start.
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first. At Cooperators, one of our core values is to give back to the communities that we live in. Thanks to the support of our clients in Lloydminster and area, in 2023, Jason Arden Associates has donated $40,000 to local nonprofits, charities, students, athletes, and other special events. How does your insurance company support our community?
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
It's more than just taxes at LNA CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at LNA CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. LNA CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Wellings of Lloydminster is a brand new community within a community, and they are excited to be here in Lloydminster and help you live your life to the fullest. At Wellings of Lloydminster, their mission is to enable connection, build community, and enrich the lives of their 55-plus members. You can discover a new way of living and a new way of retirement and experience more freedom. And this, of course, is the time of year where you really want more freedom. Freedom to travel, freedom to spend more time with your family, less time cutting grass and that kind of stuff. At Wellings of Lloydminster, independence speaks for itself, and the social opportunities outside your door are endless. You can visit Wellings of Lloydminster at 3211 72nd Avenue on the Alberta side, and they have gorgeous 1- and 2-bedroom villas that are available right now. And 2-bedroom villas include a garage. For more information, visit wellingsoflloydminster.com. Well, we are excited to have Mayor Gerald Aalbers with us today, and we only have him for a few more minutes, so I'll try to keep my questions a little bit briefer. But we've talked a lot about Costco and about the Cenovus Energy Hub, but I did want to talk to you about healthcare, because when we were at the symposium for the Housing Symposium, it was brought up several times that Lloydminster doesn't have any stabilization beds. Zero. None. And the crowd, when it was brought up that we need to have the stabilization beds, the crowd let out a round of applause. Yep. Gerald, you were there. I saw you clapping maybe the loudest of everybody else. What's your role in trying to get us those stabilization beds, and why is that so important?
So let's break down the stabilization beds. Those are mental health stabilization beds. So currently, the hospital is not really set up and have the ability to help someone here today. There is a psychologist, I believe, on call from that perspective, that you would have to go to North Battleford or to St. Paul, Alberta, depending on which side of the city you have your residence and your health card from. So this is one of the challenges. We've seen what's happened over the last number of years with mental health and addiction challenges in our own city. And again, then when the hospital was built, this wasn't, I don't know if it was even considered. I wasn't here back in the 80s and what was looked at, but it has been identified since. But where do you put it? And needs space and the support staff. And we know there's a shortage of healthcare workers on many different fronts. So we have had conversations. We hosted the ministers of mental health and addictions for both Saskatchewan, the Alberta minister was here, the Minister of Health, also responsible for mental health and addiction through that minister, was here as well. It was a pleasure to have Minister Williams and Minister Cockrell here. They heard the request very clearly. That was one of 3 items we asked for from that perspective. We had a chance to tour some facilities in the city associated to mental health and addiction. And yeah, they got the message. As I said earlier, the challenge we've got is, if I'm getting at a provincial level, and I've heard it already, we have $60 a barrel oil if we're lucky right now versus $70 or $80 barrel oil, and other pieces to it. So it's on the list, what the provinces can deliver, and ensuring, and the message again conveyed back to both ministers, if you work together, your departments don't have to spend a full $1 on each side. We could actually get 10 beds in Alberta to pick up 5, and Saskatchewan to pick up 5. They may come back and say we're going to fund 3 of each for 6. Would be better than none. But if you don't start, and that's where a lot of people have asked, we're asking for the full meal deal, because if we don't ask, we're never going to get it.
Okay, when Paul Richer was here, he kind of indicated that he was frustrated with the amount of dollars that other areas were getting compared to Lloydminster. So this goes back to several years, but he was saying, I would like to see Lloydminster the Saskatchewan, specifically step up and fund a new Jubilee home. He calls it Do Your Part, Saskatchewan. What do you hear when you see Paul, who's the chair of the Health Advisory Committee, saying we need to push Saskatchewan for more? Saskatchewan is not doing their part. Alberta, he says, has done their part. There's more beds in Alberta, but they haven't done their part in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, and this came up yesterday at the Governance and Priorities Committee. We had the Concerned Senior Citizens. Graham Brown did an excellent presentation and they are, they've certainly informed the Lloyd District Health Advisory Committee the concerns from seniors and that number. There is no question there is a there's a difference in the number of beds on the Saskatchewan side to the Alberta side. From that perspective, I mentioned it yesterday, and I'll say this again. Since 1958, when the first Jubilee home was built in Lloydminster, there's been 5 political parties serve the people of Saskatchewan, and we still have the same number of beds since 1958. 5 different political parties. It was replaced in '85, but same number of beds replaced, I understand, only after 58 to 85, and now here we are 85 to now, and the home has significant structural concerns and issues that need to be addressed. The former Minister of Health identified it when he was here over a year ago or a year and a half ago that we should maybe not spend any more capital on the Jubilee. It should be on that list. the challenge is following not just our city, but what goes on in both provinces. Saskatchewan has a long list of nursing homes that require long-term care facilities that need replacement. There's many communities who likely put their hand up and say, we have, a dozen, 2 dozen seniors that we'd like to have them a home right here so they don't have to leave their community. And this is where the challenge comes into. Now, we have comparable numbers for North Battleford and Maidstone, and again, I can say,
just on the Saskatchewan side.
On the Saskatchewan side, and Lloyd has faced by provincial challenge from day one. I can't imagine. I'd love to be able to go back to mayors that were here in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and ask them, what was it like? How did this? And then when the charter came along, because you'll notice that North Battleford is a regional hub for the government of Saskatchewan, as is Swift Current, Melfort, Weyburn, Saskatchewan, Yorkton, and in essence, Rosetown, Kindersley area. And we didn't get it to Lloydminster, nor a lot of services. I'm going to use Alberta as an example. A lot of services are in Vermilion, yet Lloydminster is a bigger, even the Alberta side of Lloydminster is bigger than Vermilion. And not to pick on Vermilion, but why didn't it come as far this way? And I don't have those answers, and the governments of the day don't have those answers. That's where it's at. We are, I believe, on a list. There is again another report, and Paul refers to it. The 2013 study laid out pretty clearly what needed to be done in healthcare. Again, I can't answer, and I don't know if there's anybody, even Colleen Young wasn't the MLA in 2013 when that health study was done, why and who. So we've got, going forward, what do? We need to ensure the government of Saskatchewan, through our MLA and surrounding MLAs, because this affects not just Colleen Young as our MLA, but surrounding residents that come to Lloydminster looking for that long-term care and or health care. And I say them both, they kind of tie together. But, healthcare, our hospital was built in 1985 to serve a significantly smaller population of Lloydminster, let alone the Saskatchewan side and the Alberta side. And again, I'm still trying to get some clear understanding from the governments as to commitments to the hospital, let alone, but back to this long-term care, it is on Saskatchewan. And we really hope the government of Saskatchewan will identify capital dollars for planning and engineering as quick as possible, as I would say to the hospital as well. Both of them are very key, because one serves a much greater area and a larger number of people, but in the same token, playing catch up is never easy. And then you put that up against 1.25 million people with requests from every corner of the province asking for either a new hospital, nursing home, major renovation to their hospital, urgent care facility. The list is long and endless. So that the province is definitely going to have to hear our needs, and we hope we can elevate that so they understand just how important it is. But I do follow it. Meadow Lake was one of the last places to get a nursing home in the area, and got a very nice nursing home. But I don't know how old theirs was and all the pieces to it. So there's a lot of this. Isn't just as simple as the government writing a check and saying, okay, we're going to build a new nursing home, because where's it going to go? What's it going to have in it? The Concerned Seniors have done a great job of identifying all the needs in our community, from dementia, palliative care, home care, or recovery, and areas where if a senior was to fall in their home and they get out of the hospital, they need some help just getting back up on their feet through physiotherapy and surgery. Can we combine that so that they feel comfortable and have the services they need, so they don't have to go to Two Hills, or in case of Edmonton, or I don't even know where they would go in Saskatchewan if we couldn't provide the services here. So that's one of the pieces to try and to meet those needs, and then find the dollars for operations.
Is it still people thinking, I had somebody comment to me, yeah, but most people live in Alberta. Most people live on the Alberta side. So why should the government of Saskatchewan be treating people from Alberta? You guys, your city is mostly in Alberta. Everybody wants to live in Alberta.
Well, that's not truly the case. We're seeing new house development and businesses being invested. You just drive down 16 Highway and you see two major investments being made in the Saskatchewan side of the city currently along 16 Highway. This is where it gets unique. And we often talk about one city, and at the city, we talk about one city, one team is our team. But we, at the end of the day, have to live with that provincial boundary. And the city lives with it because we have 2 occupational health and safety programs, because we have to report to WCBs respectively in Alberta and Saskatchewan and work with them. When it comes to provincial items that they control, healthcare, education is one that's almost seamless, if I can use that term, but healthcare, that's, and it's, when you look at each province, that's their biggest budget line item is healthcare. And how they work that, I'm still trying to navigate my way completely around it from that perspective. So it is challenging. You know, people have said to me, why don't we just get Premier Smith to build a new hospital in Alberta? And I go, well, I can give you a rough idea. Grand Prairie started at $300 million and finished just north of $900 million on their regional hospital. From that perspective, they don't come cheap. Second, if we had 2 hospitals in this city and we didn't have a whole bunch more doctors and nurses, boy, where would you go to find health care? Because you'd have 2 hospitals and potentially the same number of doctors. You wouldn't be able to see a doctor. You might wait twice as long to find a doctor. There's just so many pieces to this that we hear every day. I don't think you could ask any member of council and myself that we don't hear about healthcare and those things. What we can do is we continue to advocate. And when I say advocate, we continue to raise that issue and make the government aware. But at the end of the day, we don't have the resources to build a new hospital, nor do we want to, because once we build it, and I'll go back to the late Ken Baker said to me, be very careful, Mr. Mayor, what you take from the provincial government, because if you take it on, they will not pay for it, and they definitely won't take it back. So that gets into some other issues that we're dealing with in our community. We're there to assist, facilitate, advocate, but we're not picking up the cost of a new nursing home, hospital, or temporary shelter because it's just not in our ballpark. That's a provincial and in some cases a federal responsibility.
So we got our parking lot paved at the Lloydminster Hospital. Paul Richer said that, I don't know if you heard this or not, but he told us that you had to threaten to camp out in order to get that done.
Paul's not totally correct, but I did threaten, and I made it very, expressed my concerns, and it's a challenge. It really is, because, like I said, as mayor, and I don't think I can speak on behalf of council, I think I can safely say this, we don't want to take over the hospital and be responsible for it. But at the same token, we also have to speak up for the safety and protection of our residents and others. And the point I made very clearly to some folks in the government and SHA was, it'd be a real son of a gun if you drove Heather up to the hospital because she had an appendicitis attack, and you got her inside, and you went and parked at 1 a.m, and then you tripped in a hole and broke your ankle or your leg in a pothole that you'd almost lose a tire in the parking lot. That was the analogy, without using you and Heather as an example, to the ministers and the department staff. And I also said that there was people in the community, and I appreciate the businesses that I had reached out to and said, can I borrow a skid steer? Because I can't run a city equipment because I'm not certified to run city equipment, but several contractors were quite willing to provide gravel and a skid steer and some safety apparel so that we could go out and do it properly, just putting gravel in the potholes and invite the media, and that got some action. So I'm not saying that's the cure-all, end-all, but you know, it's just so people know, I do get frustrated. You can ask my wife, she sees it more than anybody, but it is frustrating. How do we help move the needle on this stuff? And we're going to continue to try and be diplomatic as best as we can, but there's a letter writing campaign as an example for the Jubilee Home started, and this is very supportive of it, because the squeaky wheel does get the grease. And you know, I don't want to compare us to North Battleford or to the new hospital being built in Weyburn or to Meadow Lake's recent long-term care home, but yes, we do need to elevate that. We do need to support our MLA, because she's the one that's going to have to go to Treasury Board and help sell this. Why does Lloydminster need this from that perspective? And this is an ongoing battle. It's no different than what I saw with the support from the government of Alberta for the new supporting us on our project for the Synovus Energy Hub. It's a challenge on all levels. And I'll go back to, what's the federal government going to provide the provinces? We'll see. If the Minister of Finance says we're going to put another 2.5% into healthcare from the federal perspective, boy, that would make a huge difference. difference in 2 provinces that we count on for support.
Can you imagine if you were on the border of 2 nations? Now, there's been a lot of talk about Alberta separating, and it is growing. Whether you agree with it or not, or whether I agree with it or not, the fact is the separation movement in Alberta does seem to be growing. I don't think it's to the point where we could really start to say this is going to happen, but it's something that the city has to consider, isn't it? That what would happen if this does continue to grow, because it's not that far down the road.
So here's where it gets really interesting, and I'm going to dive into the, you call it the Constitution, a few things. Municipality is here at the will of 2 provincial ministers, the Minister of Municipal Affairs in Alberta and the Minister of Government Relations in Saskatchewan could just literally, and basically a swiping of the chalkboard, because I think you remember what a chalkboard looks like, and I can do too, we could be gone. There's no guarantee that municipalities will exist at any time by a provincial government. The only 2 levels of government that are guaranteed in the Constitution of Canada, which we're still part of that country, and that's is the federal government and the provincial government. So municipalities. So that would be one piece. Not that I think they're going to get rid of us, because I don't think the provinces and MLAs want the headache of what we deal with each and every day, let alone what they have to deal with. There's no question there is a sentiment in Alberta, and I totally understand. I grew up with the referendum, and I believe it was the 80s for Quebec, when Quebec thought they were going to think about separating, and they didn't. But again, the complexity of this whole question is absolutely huge. I don't, the sentiment is definitely there, understanding. When we see Quebec receiving the transfer payments, especially from Alberta and some from Saskatchewan, but significantly more from Alberta, and as an Alberta taxpayer, I'd love to see $13 billion put into the province today, because I can tell you the first question I'd have for Premier Smith is, out of that $13 billion, could we possibly have like $16.5 million to pay for our infrastructure needs of the work in our community? And I'm sure a lot of other mayors and councils would be asking the same. This is a much more complex issue, and there's a whole bunch of pieces I think we could dedicate a whole show to once, if and when we get to that point. I think this is a message that's being sent to Ottawa. And the question I really have is the Prime Minister and the Government of Canada listening, because we do punch our weight in the Canadian economy. The number of pickup trucks that are sitting on lots across this city and across this province that are bought and are manufactured in Ontario. Yet Ontario and Quebec still use oil and gas, but we've heard from Quebec they don't want Canadian oil. So where is their oil coming from? Maybe somebody needs to express that to Quebec, that you are supporting regimes which have no human rights, if zero human rights track record and things like that from that perspective. And, I can get on that soapbox anytime on the oil and gas industry side, because we are ethical, we're environmentally friendly and clean as best as we can be. We're not perfect by any means, and anybody in the oil and gas industry will tell you that. But we also look after things when they need to be looked after, and companies take responsibility. We do have orphan wells, and yes, we do. You ever seen an asbestos mine in Quebec? There's a pretty big hole, and I don't know who's looking after that. So we do need to have a conversation at a national level that brings respect to the table. And I'm going to go back to an adage: you can walk into town on a Saturday night thinking you have $20 in your pocket, like Quebec might have, and I'm going to pick on Quebec a little bit, but you might only have 5, and that's really what you've got. If you had 20, 15 came from Alberta.
What you had hoped that in January we'd get Alberta and Saskatchewan together in the city. That never happened.
Yeah.
Like what's
where are we at?
Where are we at with getting the 2 provinces together in Lloydminster to go?
So,
what is the responsibility? Because I think a lot of people in Saskatchewan, and I have friends that go, they just think that Alberta, it doesn't pay their weight, and that's not necessarily the case.
That's not necessarily the case. I can give you example after example where there's challenges on both sides of the border, working with respective provinces, and that way. They both are far from perfect, but I appreciate everything that they do because it's more than whatever we get from the province is in a grant or whatever form it comes from. Let's go back to the meeting. So let's go back to the oil show of 2024. Premier Smith was on the stage, and I had the pleasure of joining her and Premier Moe at the press conference, and she indicated we would be holding a bi-provincial meeting of the governments in Lloydminster, hopefully in January, if Premier Moe got re-elected and myself. Premier Moe did get re-elected in October. I had the pleasure of being acclaimed and returning back in November. Have had conversations with both of them. Recently spoke to Premier Smith, and she's saying she's shooting for June. Excuse me for a second. We never expected what happened with President Trump. I don't think either Premier, Prime Minister, myself, and anybody else thought we'd be where we were at with President Trump, and he kind of threw that in monkey wrench, as I like to say, into the works in January. So I'm hoping, Premier Smith indicated before the end of June. So again, I'm back to waiting patiently for those Premier's offices to reach out to us and say, this is what we have for a schedule and what they'll be able to give us. I would appreciate the opportunity, and I think it would be the first time the city's ever hosted that with the two governments. I know numerous people have reached out, from healthcare to agriculture to justice to social services, saying, boy, we'd sure love to speak to the ministers if the ministers are here. So I'm hoping that message, I've conveyed that to both premiers and their staff, saying the community would also like that. And I think both MLAs would appreciate that support as well, because Colleen Young and Garth Rosewell, the Honourable Colleen Young and Garth Rosewell, does a great job representing us, but they're one voice in a room of 30, 35, and 40, or the respective numbers. So yeah, it's having all the ministers and their fellow MLAs be here from the government side to understand how Lloydminster works. Many of them I've talked to said, oh, I've driven through your city numerous times, but have you ever got off the highway? No, I never have. They haven't visited Bud Miller Park. They haven't been to the Ag Exhibition Association. Have they been downtown and spoke to residents in recovery and the men's shelter? Have they been to the RCMP detachment and talked to our members and heard from the community about how justice doesn't always work in our city? So fingers crossed, my toes are crossed. We're going to get it done. It's just a matter of when, I hope, in 2025.
We'll leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
My pleasure. Thanks for the questions. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad people reach out to you, Kurt, because we're available, council's available, but you give us another opportunity to raise those issues, and we appreciate the opportunity.
We'll continue our talk about healthcare, particularly mental health and things like that for May tomorrow, when we talk about the health care workshops with the Lloydminster Region Health Foundation. That's tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, right here from the new Lloydminster Nissan.